Hello and welcome to another episode of the OK Guard Show. I'm Staff Sergeant Brian Schroeder.
And I'm Leanna Machino, and we want to welcome you to the second episode of the OK Guard Show. Today's episode is on tornado safety.
So seasons changed, we're back to spring. Here in Oklahoma, we are no stranger to tornadoes. On May 20th, 2013, an EF5 tornado with 210 mile per hour winds ripped through Moore, Oklahoma, killing 24 and injuring more than 200 people, causing an estimated $2 billion in damage. The tornado went from 1 mile wide to 2.6 miles wide in 30 seconds. To give our listeners a scale, the widest point of Manhattan in New York City is 2.3 miles.
Tornadoes have been observed on every continent with the exception of Antarctica, with the majority of them occurring in the United States, where there's an average of 1,200 per year. In Oklahoma, 62% of tornadoes happen between April and May, with an average of 21 in April and 23 happening in May, and all between the hours of 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Today on the show, we have three special guests who bring a wealth of knowledge that help us through this tornado season.
We had an in-depth and informative discussion about all things tornado, including safety, preparedness, and what to do if you're an Oklahoma National Guard soldier or airman when disaster does strike. So we hope you enjoy this episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Introduce yourself and what your position is.
Okay, I'm Christopher Bruce. I'm a storm tracker for Fox 25. Fox 25 sends out storm trackers to be in the field to look at when weather's going on. There's a lot of things that, say, radar doesn't tell us, so we got to have a nice ground view of what's going on. And so Fox 25 uses storm trackers to do that, and we send back video and things to show the public that this is exactly what's going on the ground.
Cool. And how long have you been involved, not necessarily with Fox 25, but weather in general?
All my life. I've been storm tracking since I was 16. So as soon as I got a license, I was out. You know, Mom really loved that. So, but I mean, it's been an all my life thing since about 5 or 6 years old. So, always been a weather enthusiast.
Cool. Okay. And so, Tech Sergeant Daniel Martinez, same thing. What your rank, first name, last name, and your position?
Okay, I'm Tech Sergeant Daniel Martinez. I'm a weather technician out at Will Rogers Air National Guard Base. Pretty much there as a weather technician, our main mission support is for the MC-12s, so we do a lot of pilot support. They come to me to see, if they can do a certain mission, if they can be able to fly. Sometimes they change up their mission depending on how the weather's going to be that day. So I'm basically the answer for them to provide them the weather data, and they can kind of weigh the options based on the risk and everything, whether it's going to be training or here it's a lot of training. When we're deployed, it's a lot more real world, so the risk kind of changes on what they do. So I do that, but I also provide data to commanders. We send a 5-day out to leadership on the base, and even comes out here at JFHQ where they can kind of just weigh whether they can, maybe have people on the road that day for winter weather and stuff like that. So that's the main thing I'm providing, just basically weather data so that they can weigh the options. We don't make the decisions. That's up for the leadership.
You just provide the data so that they can.
A lot of people think that we make those decisions, like, hey, change this for today. Like, I can't, I don't make those decisions. I don't have the authority.
So you don't have the power. So if I were to text you and say, hey, I'd really like to get off work early today,
yeah,
can you make that call? I can't. That's not okay. Let me know who I talk to about that. So no, just kidding. So Mr. Joe Stover, same thing. Just introduce yourself. What it is that you do for the safety office.
Well, I'm Command Sgt Major Joe Stover, retired. I'm currently the safety manager for the Oklahoma Military Department. I conduct training, safety inspections, and just to ensure that all state employees that work for the military department have a safe and healthy work environment.
Okay, perfect. All right. Oklahoma is officially in tornado season. So what time frame does that season actually occur?
Tornadoes can happen, or severe weather can happen anytime in Oklahoma. The peak season's usually April, May, June, with May being kind of the hot spot. We do have a fall season that kind of has a little spike to it, but severe weather can occur at any time. So you say the ingredients for that in the springtime are a little bit better. There's a lot of ingredients that have to come together for severe weather to happen. One of the big ones being moisture, and we get a big thing of moisture that comes up from the Gulf of Mexico in the springtime, and then also a little patch that comes up in the fall. So that kind of there's a lot more reasons behind it, but those are kind of the peak times.
And so that's kind of why Oklahoma and our region is such a hot spot.
The way I've always, the easiest way I could explain it, and the way I was taught, is basically you got three main features, weather features that occur right in the Great Plains area. You get, like he was talking about, that Gulf moisture. When we go to spring, we kind of move to more of the low levels, kind of a southerly flow. So that brings in the moisture out of New Mexico, kind of West Texas area. You get like the dry line setup, which is like that separation between the moisture and the dry air comes out of the southwest. And then you'll get like a trigger with the front coming out of the Rockies, which brings cold, dry air. So all that air basically is causing a lot of instability. And there's a lot of other things that occur in the atmosphere with shear, with the low levels and the upper levels that cause kind of like a roll and rotation with the storms. So we're just like in the prime setup in this part of the world. Like, doesn't happen like that. I mean, like you were saying, that you can get tornadoes in every state, but here is just a prime setup for tornadoes to occur.
So everyone in Oklahoma should probably move.
It could be Oklahoma, Texas, Canada, pretty much the Great Plains.
Another thing is the Southeast gets the season first. So you saw already this year that Southeast has had several tornadoes. So being in central U.S., you can kind of look to the Southeast, and when their season starts up, you know that it's about to shift west and come to us. So that's just about every year. That's a good indicator.
Okay. Does that indicate, hey, this season may be a bad one from that, or is it just kind of hard to tell?
Predicting how bad each season's going to be is, I mean, it's a 50-50 shot.
It's a we'll tell you afterward.
It shows that there are ingredients like moisture. I mean, the moisture comes up to the southeast first, so that shows you that, yes, the Gulf is producing a lot of moisture and sending it up this way. So it does show a few indicators that way, but it takes a lot of things to make a storm happen, and to say that there's going to be a lot or little for each season, it's truly hard to do at this point in time with our forecast tools.
There's some studies that even talk about like the temperature of the waters in the Gulf and the Pacific, and whether you're El Nino or La Nina, and all of that weighs into, like, if we're getting a lot of moisture flow this year. Last year was more wildfires they had than they actually had tornadoes, but it's just kind of a cycle, and that's where they're trying to, I've even read some studies, they're thinking the tornado alley's expanding, so that's another, but it's all right now, it's just science, there's always a theory. You just gotta take that data and see.
There's another theory that the tornado alley is shifting east because the arid line is notably shifting east. So right now the arid line's pretty much western Oklahoma, and you're starting to see that arid line go east, and therefore with that moisture moves east and that kind of thing. So there's.
So maybe in a couple decades, Oklahoma will just be out of it.
Maybe.
Just put it into the ocean. Well, maybe not. That might not be good.
Last year, the tornado season, we had 0 deaths, and that's the first time since 2006 that Oklahoma's experienced that. So,
wow. Every season, is that kind of how?
Just about every season, somebody has lost their lives due to the weather in Oklahoma.
And last year was the first year they did not. Okay, and hopefully that's due to taking the right precautions and things like that, which we'll dive into. So, so let's talk preparation. What are some key considerations that people need to take that should be planned, planned beforehand in case of a tornado emergency?
Well, the first thing is to have a plan. Either at work, your office should have a plan, your schools, even at home, you should have a plan of what you're going to do in case of a tornado severe weather happens. And then your preparation. You have your survival kit, your tornado kit, what papers you need, food, water, shelter, and then also have a plan afterwards of what's going to happen after the storm is over with. Where you're going to meet, do you have a designated place? How are you going to notify all your relatives, or they notify you? So having a good plan is the best start.
Okay. And you talked about a work plan, a family plan, an individual plan. As far as drills go, do you think it's important for them to practice those at schools? I remember, we would have a tornado drill all the time and have to go into the hallway and put the books over our head, which I don't think they do now. They may, I don't know. But do you think it's important for families in the workplace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even in the workplace, they should have a drill. Employees need to know where they need to go. Also, not every place has a good, safe area to go to. You may be at the center of your office complex in the building, but you need to make sure that that's a good structural sound place to go to, because we don't want to put people in one spot and have a catastrophe that the wall comes in or the ceiling falls on top of them. So you need to evaluate that and look at your plan, but it does need to be rehearsed even at the workplace.
Okay. So as far as our homes, what practices and what do we need to do to best prepare our homes for tornado season?
Well, I know, being fairly new here in Oklahoma, I've read some safety plans, like you're saying, have a plan. Mm-hmm. Another thing a lot of people might forget is when you get your go bag, which a lot of people, something that you can take to the shelter right away, like medications. Some people, because you might be stuck there, or you might not have a house when you get back out. You might need, heart pills or something like that, and that's a little bit late. You might not even be able to get to a pharmacy or something at that point. So those medications is a big thing. Just those things that you might not think about that you might need just to survive.
Well, one thing is make sure you have water. If you have a shelter inside your home, a basement or a cellar, you need to have plenty of water, and always prepare to have at least 3 days worth of rations, your water and your food. So a person normally averages a gallon of water a day. So if you figure 3 days and you've got 4 people in the house, it's quite a bit of water that you need to store in your cellar. Same way with some of your important papers, mm-hmm. your documents in your house. If you don't have those in the safety deposit box, they're in your home, you could lose those. So those are something you may need to have as part of your in your kit to go to your basement or your safe place.
And one thing is to just stay aware of the weather. So we usually know a day, 2 days out that the Storm Prediction Center will put out these products that'll say, okay, we think that there's going to be some severe weather here, slight, moderate, high. You've heard those risk levels. So you usually know a day or two out. That's the perfect time to start thinking about all these planning and getting these documents together, getting the water in your shelter and those kinds of things. And then the biggest thing is for people to just stay aware on the day of the weather, check in 4 or 5 times that day to see what's going on. So look for, watches come out first. When a watch comes in, then you need to really be aware of what's going on, and don't wait for that warning to happen. Already be ready to go when the watch comes out, because the watch is going to come out way earlier than any tornado or severe thunderstorm warning. So it's just check in. It's the people that get caught up in this. They may have had a plan, but they weren't being weather aware on the day of the severe weather.
And something potentially catastrophic could happen.
Right.
Okay.
And also you need to rehearse your plan. Once you rehearse it, take your inventory of your items that you have. Make sure you have plenty of batteries, cell phones, chargers. You can charge your cell phone up, because your cell phone's not going to last 3 days in a storm shelter. But you can take inventory, making sure that they're charged and they're good. They're not out of date.
Okay.
And I would say, even like if you have your family plan, have a place, like if you can't get in touch with each other, have a spot that you can meet up if something has happened, okay. Rather than be, lost.
One of the things I heard the other day on the news, because they were talking tornado safety, was registering your cellar if you do have one. And we can link in the show notes where you can go to do that. But I thought I'd never thought of doing that, but I think it's very important, because if you have, I guess the concept of that is houses on top, they can know exactly where your cellar is so they can come and get you.
I live in Yukon, and they just came out, because I just had a shelter put in. They actually come out and GPS mark it with the house, so and that's part of the registration. So I don't know if a lot of cities do that, but I
Okay.
thought that was pretty.
Is that a Yukon a city thing or
City
just
by city, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it's usually the fire departments or
They
a lot
said
of
they're actual city
the city,
people. They came
yeah.
out and
yeah. So
they just marked it and they said, okay, we'll register it and you're good to go.
That's good.
definitely check into that, whatever city you're in. 'Cause
And if they don't, you can physically go online somewhere and register where it's at, I guess.
Yeah, ours is, when I had ours put in our garage, they came out and marked it, GPS'd it, and registered it with the fire department. So they know it's there. Because if a tornado hits your house and everything's on top of it, nobody knows that there's a cellar inside your garage.
Right.
So,
So let's talk cellars. There was a very terrible, it was, I can't remember the year, 2015. A woman lost her life, and it was an outdoor shelter, and it was a flash flood incident. So let's kind of I know that wasn't in the pre-questions, but let's dive into that on what are some ways people can avoid that, because that's something you wouldn't think about. Like you got massive dumps of rain, so
yeah, flash flooding kills more people than tornadoes. For instance, May 31st, we had the largest ever El Reno tornado, 2.5 miles wide, broke all the records, huge historic proportions. 8 people died in the tornado, but 13 died in flash flooding. And a lot of that was due to taking shelter, because when that tornado looked like it was going to move into Oklahoma City, it was a get underground or you won't survive type moment. Well, then that storm just dumped tons and tons of rain, and people got caught up in culverts and things like that. So again, if you have a plan, you're not trying to last minute go and jump into a culvert. But yeah, if you've got storm shelter and you're kind of in a floodplain, you need to really analyze that and think about that, because you need to, most of the outdoor storm shelters, they build them up a little bit. There's some, it's not just sitting right down on the ground for that very reason. But if you know that your yard or house is prone to flooding, that needs to be something definitely prepared for when you're putting in your storm shelter.
And something I was told I didn't think of until they came out to put my shelter in the garage, kind of get the idea where the water flows. Because the guy that was putting it in, he said might not think about it, but like if let's say your water heater gets wiped out and there's a you got a water main there, that water can flow into your garage shelter, not even thinking about it, and that could be if you can't get out of there, that could be an issue. You might even I thought about putting like a pump or something in there so I could just, in case water does start, I wouldn't even have thought of that.
yeah, the pump thing is interesting because what that would be just a terrible incident, a tornado, and your cellar is flooding. So, is it what do you do if you're there? Like what? Am I going to drown, or am I going to get out of here so that I don't but risk a tornado striking where I'm at? So what would be, and there may not be a great answer. I don't know. The pump thing I think is a great.
Some shelters have jacks in them, or you can somehow, if you get something happen, land on top of it.
I have a 5,000-pound come-along in mine that I'm able to pull the door open or able to move objects off the top of the door.
Okay.
So you can get out. So.
Okay. So recommend people looking into those. I imagine it's an investment, but saving a life is worth it.
Oh yes.
So, okay. So what about homes? Just protecting our homes in general. Sometimes it's just, are there things around your home, like on your patio, or things like that to kind of protect your stuff? What would you recommend?
On a current home, there's not a lot you can do. The newer building codes they're starting to do things like reinforcing the walls and doing some extra building things. You always got to be mindful of if you have like sharp objects or something out in the yard or things. When even just high winds or a tornado comes around, it's not the air that kills you, it's the things that are in the air. So anything you can do there, there's not a lot you can really do to mitigate that. So the best thing to do is to find that place in your home that is a small room, best as you can, center part of the house. It's got some good walls that will reinforce you to protect you from all the flying debris. But there's no saving your home. You know, there used to be a myth that you open up all the windows because there was pressure gradient that your house would explode with the pressure, and if you did that, it's just a myth. There's nothing
So
that proves
you
any of that.
You don't have
So
to crack
don't
your
waste your
windows.
time
Okay.
cracking your windows
Okay.
when you need to be getting to shelter.
Okay.
The bigger thing is talking with, tornado safety is get to the center part of your house, find a helmet. If you don't have a shelter, obviously, find helmet, anything to cover your head, your neck, those kinds of things, especially for children. Have a bicycle helmet around at all times during storm season, and just try to do everything you can to keep yourself from as low as you can go, as center part of your house as you can go, to protect yourself from all the debris that's flying around.
So we talked a lot about key supplies, and again in the show notes we can list a ton of different supplies in that so that people can take a look at what they should do. So let's bridge over to vehicles. We're not always going to be at home. We're not always going to be at work. We may be on the road. If severe weather does strike when we're in that situation, what should we have in our vehicles supply-wise when we're on the go?
You should always keep a first aid kit in your car.
Okay.
There's other things, blankets and stuff that could help you. But as far as stuff in the vehicle for a tornado, that may be up to an individual what they would like to have and take with them. But definitely a first aid kit and probably some blankets. Phone chargers. Keep your phone charged at all time while you're in the vehicle.
You can do things like make sure your windshield wipers are good. Use products like Rain-X to help you, because if you do get caught in a situation, really heavy downpour rain, and you're trying to get out of that, you need as best you can see as possible. So just little things like that, or keeping your car maintained, just to make sure that you don't break down somewhere where you don't want to be broken down.
Okay.
I'd say even I keep a fire extinguisher in my car. You never know if you might come across somebody that might be in need of that, or just something along those. But it's definitely, I know with cars, I've always been told with tornadoes you might want to be away from, it's one of those things. But
Right.
but I guess if you're trying to get away from wherever it's going, then
A car is the worst place to be when a tornado strikes. So you would rather be in your house, even if you don't have a storm shelter, than to get in your car and try to drive. And there's been several instances where they would say on TV, if you're not underground, you won't survive this. So people jump in their car and they start driving. Highways get log jammed. They were sitting, May 31st, for example, there was 500 people, a major highway, and both lanes are going the same way. People trying to drive south, and they were all just sitting ducks. And if that thing had kept going the way it was going, it would have been a very, very bad situation. That is the worst thing to do, is to get in your car. If you don't feel safe in your house, you need to make sure that you drive somewhere else long before a warning comes out. So like I was talking about earlier, when the watch comes out and you say, this isn't a place to be. For example, if you live in a mobile home is just like sitting in a car. You're sitting so far off the ground that your chances of survival are pretty slim. So if there's not a storm shelter nearby, then yeah, maybe that's time to let's just go drive somewhere where there's not weather event today. But you want to do that long before a warning comes out or somebody on TV starts telling you to get underground.
Right. Leave now. It's on the ground. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's the worst time to then jump in my car and go somewhere.
Definitely. Okay.
And if you are okay.
So if you do get caught in your car on the highway and there's a tornado, they'll tell you to leave your car, get to a depression area, a ditch, and cover up as much as possible. But again, you have to really watch for the water and the flooding in those type of areas.
Okay.
So.
Another thing with that, do not stop under the overpasses. Do not take shelter under the overpasses. The overpasses create a wind tunnel, and the tornado will suck you right out of there. And then a lot of people will stop underneath. We had this situation just a few weeks ago. They'll stop underneath an overpass. Well, then everybody else on a highway is sitting ducks. So even just a hailstorm, everybody else is now stuck there. So you do not stop underneath an overpass.
That one caused some wrecks too, right? Because people were I saw the images from the news, and they were putting out that same warning, hey, do not do this. And it was, you could see the vehicles all the way to the edge of the overpass just bleeding into the road of just a line of cars. Well, if you're hauling, 70 miles an hour down interstate and heavy rain, and all of a sudden you come up on an overpass, that could be very bad. So, and we'll get into that. I wanted to talk pets. I'm a huge dog fan. I love them. Don't like cats. No offense to cat people, but just for supplies, and then we'll dip into the what not to do, pretty much. What are some things that you should do to protect your pets? This hit me yesterday. They were talking about, make sure you have food for your pets, and if you're not going to be home, make sure they're in a sturdy crate in the cellar or in the cellar if you have one, things like that. So what are some things that you would recommend? Because I don't know how many pets in even the 2013 tornado were just everywhere and didn't know what to do, and they were terrified. So what's something we can do?
Well, I know the plan I got, my mom lives pretty close to my other house, or my house, and like if something happens, that's where the shelter is, so she's planning to just go there. My dog's, there, so she'll just put him in the crate that he has and take him down into the shelter. So that's the plan I got. So I don't know how many, if people have numerous pets, they might have to get numerous,
right.
those crates.
Goes back to the planning thing. If a watch comes out and your pet is alone at home, it might be a good time to
maybe a neighbor that you can trust and that they can go in there and get your pet.
Okay. Yeah.
Another thing too is if your pet something happens, you can't get your pet to the shelter, and your pet gets lost, like in the May 20th tornado. Mm-hmm. Make sure they have a collar with a tag. It's got all your information, or even use one of the chipping services that way when they do get an inflow of all these pets, they can easily find the owners.
Is there anything in particular for you two on what your office does prior to a tornado in preparing? In your specific roles, the safety office would have a big piece in that, and then as a weather technician, you'd have a big piece in that. So what are some things, and we'll start with you on.
If we're expecting severe weather, a lot of weather models we can start getting a good resolution 72 hours out, but we also have a special weather statement that we prep, and that goes out to leadership, and also we send it here at JFHQ so they can start thinking that. But the special weather statement, basically it covers that 72 hours, and it can just at least start getting that process of thinking, hey, what are we going to do, because with the weather models now, a lot of times we're not really surprised when the setup happens so much as people just taking it serious, so that way they can at least get that protocol set up.
In the safety office, we monitor the weather all the time, along with the operations at the headquarters here at the military department. We share information back and forth, but also we monitor what the situation is across the state. Do individuals need to leave? There's certain counties that's going to be affected, and we monitor those and send out messages. Hey, if you need to leave, go secure plenty enough time so they can get to their location where they need to go in a safe manner. We do also have safety messages. Matter of fact, April is severe weather month, and we send out a safety message for it of the do's and don'ts. But again, when it comes to this type of weather, we monitor it through the TV and also the phone apps. Everybody in the office has a phone app with the weather on it that gives them the alerts.
So employers, what advice would you have? Because there's some employers who are like, well, we really need you here, and I realize, but if you live an hour away, you're commuting. What advice would you have for employers who, hey, there's bad weather coming in?
Never let your employee leave in a bad situation. Make sure they have a plan that if what's going to happen that day, the weather's bad, if they need to leave, what time do they need to leave, but never keep an employee there that's worried about their home or their other family members. Just make sure that they're safe. So if they do let them go or leave, just make sure it's in a timely manner. They don't leave in the middle of the storm. So that's the hard part of a boss or a supervisor to say, nope, I'm not going to let you leave right now. So get on the phone, contact your family members, and make other plans. But do give them enough time. If employees need to leave, make sure that you give them enough time to leave so they can get to wherever they need to go.
Okay, perfect. So what should our guardsmen do to prepare for both tornado season and when one is coming?
Well, the guardsmen, this is their job. This is one reason they joined the Guard. Not only to serve their country, but also to serve their state and to assist their neighbors. So if this type of season, they need to prepare, have a bag ready, have their stuff packed.
By stuff you mean their military
gear? Their military gear, whatever they need. Have a separate bag always ready to go during this time of year. Have their phone rosters ready, who they need to contact in case they get called for an alert. Contact their leadership, their chain of command, and someone with their soldiers that they're responsible for. They need to have their information so they can contact them. And always inform your command of your status, your situation.
Okay. So is there the idea that be prepared, but don't take it upon yourself if one did strike to self-deploy?
Correct. Yeah. Again, that's what a guardsman does. He wants to go out and help his neighbors. But what they should do is notify their command, let them know the situation. A lot of times, even our own soldiers, their home is destroyed. They're in a bad situation, so they can't go to the unit. So they're in the middle of taking care of their family. That's understandable, but they still need to notify their command to let them know their situation. Even if they're not activated, still let their command know that this is where I'm at and I'll be standing by the phone. Mm-hmm. Don't go self-deploy and start helping, because if you do get a phone call, now you're in the middle of something. So you're in the middle of assisting somebody and you just can't leave because they're depending on you, especially if you're in uniform. Mm-hmm. So they don't want you to leave. They look for you as guidance. So again, I would just say stand fast, notify your command, and wait for your orders.
And now for a quick commercial break. Hello, OK Guard family. Staff Sergeant Brian Schroeder here. Guess what's right around the corner? That's right, April 22nd is Earth Day. Without getting all kumbaya, we would like to remind our listeners about this podcast's favorite Army regulation, AR 200-1, Environmental Protection and Enhancement. This fine piece of Army doctrine outlines policies for preserving, protecting, conserving, and restoring the quality of the environment during all military operations. That means our domestic enemy could be the individual pouring engine oil or fuel on the ground because there's not a convenient place nearby to get rid of it. It is the responsibility of all service members, from the Secretary of the Army down to the slick-sleeved soldiers and airmen of the Oklahoma National Guard, to preserve natural and cultural resources, comply with local, state, and federal environmental regulations, and of course, unit SOPs. Captain Planet is not my company commander, but integrity is one of my core values. When I see one of my fellow soldiers leaving trash out in the field, it's my and everybody else's responsibility to say something. It is our country that we signed up to protect. That includes doing our part to protect the environment from all enemies, foreign and domestic too. And now back to our regularly scheduled podcast.
So you talked about the biggest mistake people can do when they're in their vehicles, which is first of all, getting into their car in general and going under an overpass. So what should people do if they are in a car? Maybe they weren't staying weather aware. All of a sudden there's chaos happening and maybe they see the tornado or they decide to turn on the radio. It's getting pretty dark outside and something is on the way to where they are. What should they do?
So, as a storm tracker, we always have an escape route. So, if you are staying weather aware and you do get caught up in something, always know what your roads are and what your escape route is. If it is a clear road and you know, okay, I can drive south to escape this, then yes, get out of there. Don't just get out of your car and be a sitting duck. find that escape route. If you get caught in a situation where you weren't staying aware, and now you see it's heading to you, you have no way to escape, then getting out of your car and finding a low-lying ditch is a safer way to, you have a better chance of surviving that. Do not go up underneath an overpass. You're going in straight into a wind tunnel. You're coming off the ground. You want to get as low as you possibly can. And then always keep in mind, we talked about flash flooding. So if you're going to a ditch and it's got water in it already, you be mindful of those things. If you are in a situation where you see the tornado, roads are clear, give it 5-6 seconds to just sit and watch the tornado. If you can see the tornado move to your left or right, then it's likely not going to hit you. If you see the tornado is not moving to the left or right, but it's growing a little bit, then it is coming right for you. Something I do as a storm tracker is I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of people that post videos of a tornado coming right at them. You can watch some videos beforehand and see what that looks like, so that if you ever get caught up in that situation, then you know how you know what that looks like. So
people on their
something you can do.
Just
blah, blah, there are lots of videos showing a tornado growing wider.
Great for video, but not for safety, probably.
Right. So you want to see what that looks like on video before you see it in real life. So if you do see it going to the right, which you can drive south. If you see it going to the left, and you can drive north, that's usually in Oklahoma, anyways. That's usually a good advice there. But I mean, it all depends on the road structures and all that stuff. Keep in mind that there's always a large rain core, hail core is always, I should say always, it's usually in front of the tornado. So if you're caught in a thunderstorm that you do know is, you get a tornado warning and you know, okay, that is on this storm I'm on, and I'm right in the middle of the core, and so I can't see anything because it's just rain and hail and lots of junk. That's the core comes first, and then the tornado comes after. So I mean, each situation's different, but that's the point where you need to really try to figure out, okay, where was the front of the storm? Do I need to turn around, go back the other way, or keep driving where I'm at's the better route? Usually turning around and driving as fast as you can back the other way is usually the case, but it just depends. Most storms in Oklahoma are traveling northeast, east, southeast. We never have any west moving storms, hardly ever. So the north-south roads are usually the way to go.
Okay. Let's say all electronics just go down to include the ability to use your phone. What are some signs for, because I remember when I was little, they said when it gets really still, all of a sudden it's windy and it gets really still, and I don't know if that's true. And that's happened before, when it's just been super windy and all of a sudden just calm. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh God, I'm about to get hit by a tornado. Is that true? What are some signs people should look for if they don't know?
There are a lot of spots in a thunderstorm, whether they're tornadic or not, that will have some wind and then it will be calm. And not every time there's a tornado will there be a calm before. That can be true, but that's not always true.
Okay.
So
don't hold on that, like, oh, it's not calm at all, so no tornado.
Yeah. Now, most of the time you have the rain core first. You do have a little bit of a clearing, and then you get into what they call the mesocyclone, where the tornado would be at. So that, I think that would hold true most of the time, but not always. And it depends on how large that mesocyclone can be. It can be spitting out some winds on its own. It becomes its own little weather system. And I mean, each one is its own living, breathing entity, and I've seen a lot of them, but they're all different. You can't just wait for the calm or anything like that. But it's always just about being prepared, having a plan, and once you get into that first situation, let's just go ahead and be safe, be cautious. Better safe than sorry mentality. And
hop in the shelter.
Go ahead and hop in the shelter.
Safest room.
Yeah. Even if, I mean, I've gotten my shelter when there was a storm 10 miles away and I knew no way that this thing's going to turn south and come toward me. I'm going to go ahead and hop in here because I've got several dogs, and it takes a while to get them down.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and do that. So
Yeah.
you just hang out in the shelter for a little while, and when it's over,
Maybe the
come back out.
kids,
Yeah, maybe.
depending on how Noah's being. For your role during a tornado, are you continuously monitoring and reporting?
There's a point like that where we have to actually shelter ourselves, but we'll monitor as much as we can until we see that it's actually going to be a threat to us. Then we'll pull away and go to where we need to, even if it's a backup or whatever. But then we'll just have to shelter and wait till it's for our own safety.
So let's talk about after a tornado. I think we've touched really, unless there's something else you want to add on prior to and during that you think is key, we can absolutely talk about that. But there's a lot of stuff that happens after a tornado. So what should people do immediately after one strikes their home or maybe nearby?
I would say take an assessment, any damage of the house and stuff. If you're a guardsman, pick up the phone and notify your leadership and see what the situation is at the emergency management level. If the National Guard's being activated, monitor the TV, see what the damage is with the path of the storm. But just do an all-around assessment of your family, your loved ones, your neighborhood, and again, monitor the TV, see where it's going, what's coming in behind it.
Yeah, kind of that whole rule of like you got to make sure that you're well before you can help others. That's always remembered.
And with that, there's a lot of adrenaline that runs through your body whenever you've just experienced something like a tornado destroying your house and everything. You could have some injuries that you don't even know about. You could be bleeding somewhere and you don't even realize it because you're still in that adrenaline mode. So you want to really check yourself over and your family members over if you've just gotten out of that, and make sure that there's no trauma, and see if you do need emergency help, because I've seen it firsthand where people have some emergency needs and they don't even realize it because they're too worried about how much stuff they still have left or everything. So focus on yourself first before really trying to figure out the whole situation.
Okay. And you talk about seeing it firsthand. So you are also an Oklahoma Army National Guardsman, staff sergeant, and you worked at that time for the Public Affairs Office with the Oklahoma National Guard. And I know you were one of the first people on the ground capturing footage of what it was that was going on to feed to news so we can inform our state, the nation, the world. What were some things what was that experience like, being there after seeing something so huge go through the city of Moore?
That was just a really bad night for a lot of people. The thing that stands out in my mind of that night was I interviewed somebody, and he said that he just got back from a deployment and this looked like a war zone, and that's the best way to describe the scene. He said this was worse than the war zone that I had just been in. I mean, everything was just completely tore up. That tornado just left a path of absolute destruction. Houses were gone. There were houses that all that was left was a slab. And then you walk around and you see the weirdest things, like one wall standing up and their picture still hanging on the wall, and you're like, how does that happen? But everything else is gone, and it is just, I mean, it was mass chaos there for a while. And we were at Plaza Towers, all the children there, many that lost their lives, and we were securing that area and watching the firefighters and EMTs. They were doing an amazing job getting everybody out, and that thing was just a pile of rubble, and they were doing all that they could to get down to them, and they saved a lot of lives that night. And I mean, just watching them work was amazing to see all of that. Everybody, Oklahoma, we're definitely a community, and we all come together in the worst of times, and you saw it firsthand. So one hand you're seeing this terrible thing, but then you're also seeing humanity come together. So it's just this weird bittersweet moment.
Yeah, our motto of Oklahoma, strong. And yeah. So you mentioned that you had family that lost their homes. So let's.
Yes, I had 2 brothers and a nephew that lost their home. My son's house was even damaged, and he was 6 blocks away. But both my brothers' homes was totally gone. My nephew's house was completely gone, and they were my nephew and one of my brothers was still actively in the Guard, so they were also called out at the same time, and still they were still devastated with their own homes. So it is a community-based state. Everybody comes together and helps. So that was one of the good things, that his neighbors, family members, and all came and helped them to put their stuff back together as best they could, what they could find. But again, their houses was totally gone.
So how important, after seeing that firsthand, and you weren't in Oklahoma yet during the May 20th, 2013 tornado, which is the one that they're talking about, which was the most recent, most devastating storm that we've had. We've had several through Oklahoma. The one May 3rd, 1999, that also hit the city of Moore, to include, started in Newcastle, that one. But, I mean, there were a lot of small towns, a lot of areas affected around the city of Moore. But that's a big town, and that ripped through and just devastated a lot of people's lives, and put a lot of people's lives on hold for months and months because of having to rebuild and things like that. What I found was, and I used to live in Moore. What I found amazing, you talk about the community thing, was that how quickly that community built back up. How quickly people were like, no, I love this town, I love this state, I'm staying here, I'm building back where I was. This is where I live, this is where my heart is. And I thought, just as someone who's born and raised in Oklahoma, how just impactful that was for me. Even though I already knew Oklahomans were that way, you know, seeing it was just pretty amazing. So
I think that was a big reason why I decided to move to Oklahoma.
Really?
Yeah. I saw just I mean, I haven't seen that part of it yet. I mean, which I'm sure it probably could happen, or, you know, but yeah, just I've noticed that about Oklahomans, and I was like, I could live here. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about the tornadoes. How important is it for people to hear these messages and spread that to their families, to their loved ones?
It's always important to talk about this, because I mean, I do this all the time and weather's always on my mind, but there was a few things in this session that, oh yeah, I need to do that. I haven't done that yet. You know, if you live in Oklahoma all your life, you know what to do to prepare, but let's just open up the discussion before the season starts and get that, you know, first thing on your mind, so that now I'm going to go actually put that plan in action. I'm going to run a drill at my house with my family. I'm going to get my storm shelter stocked with all the things I need and all of that. So
Anytime you can share information, ideas, and to help people, or just remind people what they need to do, is always a good thing. So
Yeah, I think if a few people listen to this and it reminds them, oh, I got to do that, or I got to get this ready. I mean, that's pretty good. It's part of that whole planning. You know, look at something that's safety directed and go for it. You know.
That happened to me this morning, talking to my husband. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing the tornado safety podcast today. We should probably prep our basement because we haven't done it yet. We keep talking about it, but it's just things, little reminders, and it's like you have to set a time, you have to do it, and you have to prepare your.
Got to get the vacuum down there. There's going to be lots of spiders.
Oh, that's the first thing my wife.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've seen people do that.
And that was
On
in
their
March. She
vacuum.
goes clean out the cellar.
Might
Get the
find a
shelter all
scorpion down
cleaned.
there.
And,
Get ready.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like
change your water out. And so.
a
It's not a
yearly
good time to
routine,
find it when you're
just
doing
like spring cleaning. It's
It
also-
is.
Okay, well, is there anything else any of you would like to add that you think is key for our listeners?
The biggest thing is stay weather aware. Know the difference between a watch and a warning. So here's usually a few days out, you're going to get an outlook. Storm Prediction Center sends out slight, enhanced, moderate, high risks. All the news stations, all the radio stations will start talking about those. So already know, okay, I need to start this day on Tuesday. I really need to be weather aware that day. On that day, when you wake up, look at that risk, see if it's changed, because a lot of the models don't really get it right till about 24 hours out, some 12 hours out. So that morning, you're probably going to have a pretty good indication of what that day is really going to look like. Then you stay weather aware and you wait for that watch. There will be either a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch. The Storm Prediction Center also puts those out. A watch means that the conditions are favorable for that condition. So tornado watch means that conditions are favorable for a tornado to happen. Doesn't mean there's a tornado on the ground or one imminent, but the conditions are favorable. When you see that you're in that watch area, and you can, there's all kinds of different apps that you can download. All those, doesn't matter what entity is promoting that app, they all get their data from the Storm Prediction Center for that watch. It all comes from the same place. So no matter which one you use, download one and get it on your phone, because everyone's got a cell phone on them, so that's the perfect way to get that info pushed to you. Once you know that you're in that watch, that's when you really start tuning in and really monitoring. And that's when you start saying, okay, now what is my plan? Do I need to get home for my pets? Do I need to pick up my kids from school? Those kinds of things, and really start doing that when that watch comes out. Then when the warning happens, you should already be ready to execute that plan. When the warning comes out, and you will get that on if you have a cell phone, those warnings are now pushed to you whether you want it or not. So that's amazing, and that's helped a lot. But once you get that warning, it is time to execute that plan, and you're already set, ready to go. If you do that, you're gonna be just fine.
My wife asks Alexa every morning, "What's the weather?" So before she even gets out of bed, so she's in tune to the weather to this time of year.
Yeah, I have to tell my mom because she doesn't really watch a lot of news. But I say we're in Oklahoma now. You gotta be weather aware. That's a big thing. So I'll remind her a lot of times if there's gonna be a severe day, or if you got anybody in your family that doesn't really watch a lot of news, you might want to, just at least be somewhere where you can hear the sirens if it's gonna, don't be blasting music or something.
Yeah. I used to live in Moore, which has, been hit a few times. So my mom would always, and she lives in Altus, she would always, text me and call me and say, "Are you watching the weather? Are you watching the weather?" Which I absolutely appreciate, because sometimes you should turn off Netflix and switch over to.
You get tied up in your daily routine and you don't forget.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming. I think we got a lot of really great stuff from this, and it's incredibly important for people to know, and honestly, you can't know it enough. So we definitely thank you for coming on the OK Guard Show. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this latest episode of the OK Guard Show about tornado safety. We hope that you found it to be informative, educational, and that you enjoyed your time with us.
make sure you tune in next month. May 15th will be our third episode covering TRICARE, and that's going to cover from what is TRICARE, what type of things are covered, are you covered, and how to enroll. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our tags there are at OKGuard. And the hashtag, I think you mentioned we use, is hashtag OKGuard.
You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate the likes and you making your computer go dang.
Ding! All right, well, we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
The OK Guard Show is produced by the Oklahoma National Guard Public Affairs Office. Any mention of products or brands does not imply endorsement. All guests on the show are volunteers in an effort to inform and educate members of the Oklahoma National Guard, their families, retirees, potential recruits, and the community.